Albanecha, Mechashem,
Actually, I didn't Yeah, Yom Kotzon, I'm Malach Baruba. I want to apologize for starting late.
Somebody did it.
For what is this? This one? So, oh, wow. Yeah. Wow. So, tonight we had a celebration. I went to my grandmother. She's starting to say a very special kapitel in Tehillim. Yeah. Hopefully, in Mitzvah in 10 years, she'll get there.
Amen.
Okay. So let's go. This is an unbelievable sikha. I actually was going to learn with the Olam 3 or 4 years ago. And I printed out some papers actually to myself. Interesting stuff connected to what we're doing tonight. In the Fabrengens und Pasteure and Shabbos Bereshis, Tov Shalom Ates, the Rebbe asked a question. And the Rebbe said that there's a few svarim that talk about this. There's a whole bunch of minhagim we do to fool the Satan. Come on, fooling the Satan. Every year. What do you think for so many years? The Satan is such a fool. The Satan is such a fool.
Now you're talking about Joe Biden.
No, I wouldn't ask a question if I was be talking about him. But so how does the Satan get fooled so badly? There is we'll talk tonight at least 5 minhagim that we do in order to fool the Satan. How do you fool the Satan? Come on. You're fooling yourself if you think you're fooling the Satan. The emissaries, there's a sefer, Emes Lianke from Reb Shaltiel Nuno, who was a Rav, the Rav in Tveria. He was 19th century, not that long ago, but he was. They said he was a Oise Pella.
Spanish?
It was a Spanish family, but he was born in Yerushalayim, right? And he wrote a sefer, Zera L'Yaakov. And it's like an encyclopedia on Kabbalah. The name of the sefer is Emes Liakov. I'm sorry, Emes Liakov. And over there, one of them, he talks about the zivug of Yaakov and Rochel, the idea of Malchus and Zoh and stuff. And he says every day there's a zivug, and they have to get rid of Esau. And they send him out in the Soda. And every time he comes back and he realizes that he missed it, he screams and he yells. And so a whole thing of Pikabala. And then he says, and he's always wondering, how could Esau be such a fool and every day be tricked again? And so he says 2 answers. One is the whole idea of shikha comes from Klippa. The idea for forgetting is from Klippa. So Klippa forgets. Then he gets another answer. He says every day the Jews purify things in the world. So what was yesterday Klippa becomes today Kedusha. So every day is psanu koichas of Klippa. So they don't know what went on the day before. Okay, those answers that he gave for his thing of Pikabola might work. I thought I brought it here. I'll bring it to Mitchum another day. So when I was looking about this Reb Shaltino Nuno, so they had an encyclopedia of Derli Yisrael, and they had a copy of his signature. I'm going to bring it Blineda Tuesday. You cannot copy his signature. I mean, this is the fanciest. I think if we went to the Guinness World Records to try to see, I think this would really might win out any other signature. Whoa, a signature you cannot imitate, you cannot copy.
From what year?
1800s.
You know what Nuno in Spanish? Little one.
He was a big tzaddik. He was big.
Hakatan.
I don't know. Anyway, so let's go quick. Let's learn. So we have 5 things here. We'll go through and then we'll do the Rebbe Sicha. Shulchan Aruch Rabbeinu, the Alter Rebbe says in Siman Tov Kuf Tzadik Aleph Siv Vav, Lama ein noegim lahaskir Rosh Chodesh b'Perish b'Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, we don't mention in the Tefillah Rosh Chodesh. So also Rosh Chodesh. So that's a separate issue. Why not? Because it's Eimas Yom Adin. But why don't we mention Rosh Chodesh? So again, that's the Shiloh, right? Why don't we say it? So Kidei Shelo Yomru Yom Sheni Shel Rosh Chodesh Yikir K'may B'Shor Rosh Chodesh. V'yimnu mimena amoid is Kimin Sheskir Rosh Chodesh Gam Yom Sheni V'tam Shen Bo Yom Rosh Chodesh Shnei Yom. Okay, so the first reason is a very rational reason. If Chazal was scared, usually Rosh Chodesh is Lamed and Aleph. They're scared that people are going to get mixed up with usually Islam and Aleph. So they said, and that makes a lot of sense. But the other one is a funny one. Anyway, Chabad, we don't say it anyway, but there are certain nuschos in the Siddur that before Ezem Mekayim and Shal Tzvachim, like on Rosh Chodesh, you would say Rosh Chodesh. In Karbanis, yeah.
I haven't been out with all the trick of something forgets the next day, so that you can play the whole year round. You don't have to have the problem.
But it's hard to imagine. In this Sefer, he's talking about certain koiches of people, but the Satan is a malach. In the Iyuv, Sefer Iyuv,
He gets born every day.
it sounds like he's there like Gabriel. He's like Gabriel, and it says by that by Rosh Hashanah. It says about Rosh Hashanah that Vayove b'terich b'nei Elokim l'siatzem al Hashem. He comes.
It's a regular soul.
It's like we said Shabbos that there's Yotz Meshos and Hashem Meshos. There are Takim Malachim in Kedushin also in Klippa that they born and they burn out. But there is Hashem Meshos and Kulam Oimdim Berum Olam that are standing there, and there's good Malachim, and then there's the Satan guy who's been around for quite a while, and he's the guy that the pasuk says in Iyuv that he comes with Bnei Elikim, which is the Malachim, and he tries to be Makaterik against people on Rosh Hashanah, and that's a safe in Tanakh, safe for you. So how do you trick him? He could buy a calendar. Maybe the Rebbe, when he said the Sikha, maybe in the shul they won't let him into a shul, but the Judaica store, he can go into the Judaica store and buy a calendar. And another thing, Sefer Menhagim to Rebbe Lezer Kloizner. So the Rav Kloizner, I just before I say anything, just an interesting thing. In Ashkenaz, there were for hundreds of years there were kehilas, and they kept very strongly their Menhagim. It's not stam. It was Menhagim, and there were days that were never pogroms. They had kinnas. They kept it very strong. And there were Gedolei Yisrael that wrote. First of all, there was every kehillah had sort of like a pinka or something. All this never vanished in the Holocaust, but like up to the Holocaust, there were old kehillahs. They had pinkosim for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they kept different minhagim, different places. There were Gedolei Yisrael, talking about 300-400 years ago, who started to write svarim on minhagim. Dafke Gedolei Ashkenaz. Among them is the Rebbe de Mario, Rabbi Yehuda Leib Segal, who is called, and the Marit Tirna. These two wrote Sefer Menhagim, which is like the basis of the Ramah when he wrote the Shulchan Aruch. When the Beis Yosef wrote the Shulchan Aruch, he said, I'm going to put a tablecloth on his. And his basic go-to sources is these two. The Maril's Rebbe is the Marok Kloizner. And he wrote a Sefer called Sefer Menhagim. A lot of our Menhagim goes back. This is like early Achroin Mamish. So a lot of the Menhagim in the Shulchan Aruch comes from him. So he writes this is beginning of Hilchot Rosh Hashanah Siman Aleph, Shaloi lahasker Chodesh Tishrei b'Shabbos shalafonov. Not to mention, in other words, we don't do the Birchas HaChodesh on the Shabbos before. Again, if we're going to do Birchas HaChodesh and
You know what?
we're going to have to trick him.
Not for me to go to Israel. I'm afraid because they're gonna know that I'm coming, so they're gonna be ready for me. So if I do anything to remind the army that I'm planning on coming, now they're gonna be prepared for me. If I just show up, it's gonna be a surprise. So then
A little better.
It'll be a little easier. So same thing. So if you let him know a few days early, he'll
I had a friend who is Israeli, and he showed up, no advance, and they sent him a song. Because they have it on the
But what
computer.
he's saying, Shaliach is boss up and Mekatri, that's what I was thinking.
Right.
So he doesn't feel it.
But the question is, the Sultan is a little smarter than the guys in Ben Gurion Airport, no?
What out there on the right part?
No, it's
How?
In the city. How about city? What are out there on the right part?
Oh, so we have a Kabbalah from the Baal Shem Tov that Eibush himself mentions it, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But this is broad Sefer Menhagim. Another thing he writes there. Metam zanami ein toikim be'erev Rosh Hashanah, ka'oz yesover asot and she'over yem adin v'lo yekatek. So we stop. We stop. He thinks, oh, it's over. It's all over. The Rosh Hashanah is over. And it happens to be Erev Rosh Hashanah can never be on a Shabbos because loy adu rosh. So Rosh Hashanah can never be an Aleph Dalet involved. So the only way that the Erev Rosh Hashanah would be on a Shabbos is for Rosh Hashanah to be on a Sunday, but Lo Yadu Rosh. So there's always going to be that they blow shofar, and all of a sudden one day something doesn't hear any shofar. Oh, he thinks it's all over. We tricked him. He thinks, he goes to sleep. Oh, I missed it. And then there's an opposite minig. That's the fourth minig. Mekoyach zeh maschilin likne bereishis besimchas Torah kedei shelo yovim im reishis hashana or yachiris hashana. This is an opposite. This, just in case this year the Satan is on overdrive. So on the one hand we trick him, he should think it's over, and then the other if we try to trick him, that didn't start yet. Because he thinks that for sure, when are they going to start Bereshis Bar Kim? On Rosh Hashanah. So that's why we trick him, and we're reading Nitzavim. He goes to sleep. Rosh Hashanah is going to wake up to go be Mekaterik. And then we're already dancing, Simchas Torah, Meshigat Agita Kvittel, it's already after Shayna Rabbah. So we tricked him.
My question is, the Satan goes to Shiur. You can come to a Shiur like this.
Right.
I hear that.
Exactly. That's the question. Exactly. One more. The Torah says, shows all the Lakava, look at the Klanas Bebir, Shabamach, and Moish, all the Lahor, Kedashaloyito, Oid, Achav, the Zora. The first time the Jews made a cheshbon and a mistake, so they blew shofar, they should know when Moshe goes up to the mountain. So
one second. He's bringing up what happened in the Midbar with the Sutton was part of the whole thing.
Okay, but that's a different reason. No, he's going to say now a different reason. And then he says the next reason. And so because he's going to get all mixed up. He knows he's supposed to blow shofar one day on Rosh Hashanah, and here's a whole bunch of days. So here there's a 5 minhagim already that we're doing in order to mix up the salt. The shaila is, how do you go mix up a salt? So 3 biurim the Rebbe gives. First biur the Rebbe brings, it's a diuk in the word of the Lavush. The Lavush says, Kiven shaloi kitshohu. Kiven shaloi kitshohu. That if they're not going to be Mekadesh the day, because there's the Abu Darham says the reason why we're Mavorech the Chodesh, it's like Kiddush HaChodesh in Bez, similar to that. So because Yidden are Mekadesh this manner, so and the Chazal say Miskanse Malachi Ashoris of Nekadosh Baruch Hu Emes Rosh Hashanah Emes Yom Kippur Kadosh Baruch Hu Alahem Li Atem Shoyelim Ani Atem Nei Lechet Salbez and Shalmata. So we see that the day of the Yom Tov is totally in our Kviyas. So Ki'ilu, we made that this day doesn't have any holiness. So he's a little confused because he doesn't come with such confidence. He's not sure because the Yidden didn't work Mekadosh the day. So that seems that what the Lavush says. But this answers only for Lagabe Birchas HaChodesh. It doesn't answer Lagabe the other minhagim we do. And also Lagabe Birchas HaChodesh. Or the other minig. The minig is that we don't mention Rosh Hashanah on this day, and Rosh Chodesh in the day. What we do apple and honey, and we do a lot of other things that he gets chapped that it's Rosh Hashanah. So the Rebbe says another view. A second view, the Rebbe says, look at the Gemara. The Gemara says like this. The Gemara Rosh Hashanah daf Tazayin Amud Hava. Lama Toikim by Rosh Hashanah. Why do we blow on Rosh Hashanah? Lama Toikim, says the Gemara. What's the question? Achmana Amatiku. The Eibishter said. Tickle b'chayda sheva. Lama merim. Why do we do teruah? Merim. Rachman Oma zechelin teruah. What's the question? Lama token merim kshem yoshim v'token merim kshem oim there. Why do we do it twice? The Gemara answers kedei la'arbe v'asot, to mix up the salt. So our minig is the first key is to stand. Well, the Chazal calls it Tkiyas Miyusha because really you don't have to stand; you could sit. But Paul Aminig is to stand, but it's called Tkiyas Miyusha. The second one, which is Vashmana, so it's called Tkiyas Miyumet. So the Gerashi says Pirish Ba'aruch. Rashi says, I'm sorry, not Pirish Ba'aruch is not from Rashi. I typed it wrong. Shalo Yastin Kishishma Yisrael Machavim Mitzvahs Mistatme Dvorav. When he hears how much the Yidden the mitzvahs are precious to them, so then he gets confused. But the Tosfos says, Pirush Baruch, Pirushalmi Bilam Avitzal Nachat Tziv. When we talk about Sheva Gadol, Kad Shama Koifer Shipur Zim Nechad Bohil. Kad Shama Tanyan Bohil V'Loi Bohil. He's a little, but nicht azoi Ba'ala. Shama Tanyan V'ad Bezer Shipur Di talk about Sheva Gadol. Mota Zimne LeMizbala or Misarbev. But let's sleep Pnai Lemevet Ketrugye. Shalmi says that the Sot knows that there's going to be a day, and then it's going to be Bila Mavis Neves, Avish is going to shech the Yitzhara. So when he hears the Yidden belong the first time, he's a little, what's going on? Is it that's the day, that's it, I'm dying? He says, it's my last day, says the Yitzhara. And then when he hears the second time, he starts to tremble. Maybe it's his last day in this world. And while he's trembling, so he doesn't have so much courage to be mekatrik against the Yid. That's what the Yerushalmi says. Yeah.
I mean, he has to actually feel the tears like that.
Right. No, the Rashba actually says, La'arve vasoten means, yesh mefoshim lachni ha'yetzem. A lot of Rishonim say similar to that. But I'm bringing Rashi, Tosfos, and Rashba because all the other mefoshim are basically within these three pirushim. I'm bringing a little piece of the Ritva, just L'shleimus ha'inyan to each was one of the last Rishonim. A lot of times the Ritva is like a digest of what the Rishonim had to say here. The Ritva it says like this: Hitcher balamoyer ha'ich omer kedei la'arve vasotem d'mashma medina lo tzrichi. Olebet kisem yushem yotze dei chavosek. Olebekich amar chlam brachas atkiye. Klisem v'lo yishef atkiye meri v'atkiye gem pam v'atkisem v'nam loks v'atkiye al brachas al seder brachas v'omer rav v'tzibeshonim. So he says, I don't understand. What are we doing extra? This is what Chazal said. The first set of tkiyas is to make the bracha. Second set of tkiyas is for malchus and shofars. The tzidus who needed the hoda the hok shem oimdim ham shem oimdim lotzes bebeis hakneses she'noyagin lahariya tru g'doyla v'ila'ar b'vasot k'meshkosa b'agoda v'yishalmi. That's hak arminik. That he said that there is a third set of tkiyas. Besides the tkiyas by the bracha, which is Mishushev, and then the other set of tkiyas, which is Miyumed. Right before you leave the shul, our meaning is to do 30 koilas. Other people do less, whatever. But
so basically, based on what the Rav says, that the real tkiyas for us is the third tkiyas.
No, the third is to confuse the son.
Confuse the son, but if we want to be saved by the bell, that means that the third tkiyah
That's a very important tkiyah.
Yeah, it's more important than the first one. If you want to have the first one, make it.
I think if we would now that the second,
if
every kehila would do something else, so we'd been over.
Exactly. And the problem is we're doing the same thing. We're all doing the same tricks. That his time had come, he's talking to himself to expire. So therefore, misarbev v'leis lepnai lamevet kutugraya. The Geresh Kosa b'mechiltin had Messiah shlichet the tzibura tekiya b'yavne l'shama ish kol une mikol tkua but the Ritva says v'loi noyer. So it says that in Yavna, when they'd finished davening, it would be so noisy because they're blowing all the shuls in Yavna. They were blowing to be ma'arvev the sod. Okay. He says v'loi no here. The Ritva doesn't agree with the Balamor's shot. He has many kashas. It doesn't really go well in the words of the Gemara. The words of the Gemara, it sounds like Lama Tekrim Shem Yoshev Tekrim Shem Oimdim means Kis Yoshev Tiz Miyumet. So he says a different shot. Anochen the Meimer Kipshotel at Kis Miyoshev Toidem Brachas Val Kis the Miyumet Al Seda Brachas Vavad Shem Chaypish Talk Al Seda Brachas Vavad Yotza V'Zem Mitzvos Lachachila. He says, look, he didn't have to make two sets of Kis. One miyushav them ummah. The main thing is they could have made that we want to blow from malchus and but just have tkiyas miyumad. Why did they make a double set of tkiyas? They made it to arbe vasot. That's what he says. And then while we're at it, another little piece. It's a long piece. I just quote Ike. He has a problem that all the Rishonim have. Tosfos all the Rishonim has L'choida is baltois. How can Chazal add tkiyas just to be ma'arbe of the sod? So he gives two answers. One, he says, is last mitzvah kalchos and nifte b'pamachet. Chodev oisa pamachet is going like matzah based palm a little lulav based palm. Like a baltoiser, kedamin and mekoyim shomorch kam palm b'yem letziba shenza baltoiser. Chem birish betoiser b'vat shalach zebevorich. It's like you eat it more matzah.
You're not allowed to shake it. We know that we love it so much.
That's what he's saying. This is
You're not allowed to.
That's what he's saying. You are allowed.
You are allowed.
You are allowed. The same thing here. You're allowed to blow a little extra. And the other answer says the other answer is the opposite answer. This is the type of blood that needs to be put once, and he went and put it 4 times. Chazal made a takanim to do Yom Tesheni Shel Golis. We don't have a problem with that. We don't say that's Bal Toisif. So, interesting shakla b'taya. But Yeshua says that the second answer is so good. Chazal matak. They can make Hanukkah. They make. So why over here can't you say just the second answer? So he says because here they weren't mataking it because they felt you really needed blow shayf, but they're only mataking it to mix up the sod. So therefore, some Rishonim felt that the second answer is not good enough. And you have to give another answer. It's like eating another portion of matzah or shaking the lulav a second time. Okay. Bottom line is, we see from here, the Gemara says that part of the takana blowing shofar, Chazal added something. This is what they added. Either it's the tkiyas miyusher or moment, or the 30 koilos when we leave the shul. They added a couple of koilos over here, and they did it in order to be ma'arbev the sod. So we see befeidish in Gemara, the other 5 menhagim are from Sefer Menhagim, from the Maria, from Isaac Tirna.
I'm saying that this oldest menhagim,
we see that there's a yisoid in the Gemara. The concept of la'arbev asotin is a befeidish in Gemara.
Which one is the first two?
Right, we don't know which one is la'arbev asotin. But bottom line is, at least the 30 that we're going out of shul, that's for sure la'arbev asotin, because there's no other reason for that.
That's what they added in there.
Right, they added at the end.
But that's not from the Tanoim, that's from the Achroim.
So no, according to the Balamor, that minig is really a minig that was instituted by the Chachmei HaGemara. Here, it's a minig,
I'm saying it,
but if Ashi Navina started, or Abai and Rava, or the Papa.
Yeah, but there's an they did the second one. That's
Machloikis. Which one? The Balamor says that the 30, we do basically 30, 30, and 30. So the first 2 sets of 30, you're mechuyev to do minadin, and the Chachamim made a minik to do the last 30.
What the truth is only the first one we had to do.
So that's what the Ritva himself says, that the truth is that we only have to do 1 set of 30. So
the second one was the first one or the second one.
Right, one of them is the right.
So what's the third one? That's what I'm saying. It
so he doesn't hold maybe of that there is a third one.
That's about
or maybe he holds that it's a later minig that came later. But according to the Balamor, this minig is not still a minig that started 200-300 years ago, or even 500 years ago. It's a minig that started in Zman HaShas. Unbelievable thing. And the reason
from where is it taken from?
Because the Gemara says that we're doing extra tkiyas and kedei la'arbev asotin.
Yeah, but the extra kid could be the second one.
Okay, that's the Ritva's argument. Okay. But the
Balamor doesn't have it in actual...
he did not. He thought that because the truth is, from the Gemara, it's mashma that the 30 and the 30 is part of the original takon. It just sounds that way. It a little bit sounds like in the side of the Balamor, really.
He thinks that the second one is the
He thinks that the second one is the Ikir, and the first one is only La'arbev Asov. It doesn't sound, when you just learn the sugyas, if you go through the sugyas in Rosh Hashanah, it sounds like the first and the second is part of mitzvah shofar. And Chazal were magdiv, what Abish said, Tkiya through Tkiya, and Chazal like,
the base of Mikdash. The base of Mikdash was only 1 set of keys.
It's hard to know. That's all that Rishonim asked. It says Atkan Babo. The Babo came along
by the Rambam that said it by Siddur, by Yom Kippur or the Shoshana by the Zaydah that he writes down the Siddur. It's not clear.
The Gemara says, asking the Babo. The Babo made a takona. So everyone asks, so until the Babo came along, what would they do? The generation of Moshe Rabbeinu, Yeshua and Shmuel, the Babo is one of the early Amoraim. But, for 1,300 years before he came along, Eden were blowing shofar. So, what were they doing till then?
But what I remember about
The thing about the Apollo is something else altogether. He's talking about the fact that we grow 3 types of Torah. The Torah, the Shibboleth Torah, the Shibboleth, and the Torah alone.
Right, so that they're asking, what does it mean asking about? What did they do till then?
No, but that's the very same thing. It's civil. So it's civil. The thing about the Torah of the Tom.
Right.
So that there's already a dispute on find the own of this. Like in the early generations, some people do this, some people do that. Each one was equally valid.
Right.
This one, they wrong and said that it was just a minute, really.
Right.
Just
Right. He wanted to be ma'achad that all Klal Yisrael should do one thing.
We're holding from.
by the way, I'm just trying to remember. So when the Kias in the base English happened, afterwards, you didn't used to go around town and used to continue going because nobody would like the entire Earth is
We don't know. What you're asking if this takona of being ma'arb of the Sultan was already in the Zman of Beis Hamikdash.
What was the Tkiyah happened in the base? I know that it's not
For sure, it happened in the Beis Hamikdash.
Happens in the
But it says
then what happens to the rest of
the
the
Yerushalmi over there that he brought, or whatever he brought, I got the Yerushalmi that in Yavne, at the end of davening, you could get deaf from all the shuls blowing shofar. So it sounds a little bit that it's a sort of maybe a takona that happened in this end of the second Beis Hamikdash, or at the time of the Churban. I don't know. Okay, let's go to the Rebbe's view.
There was not just abusion. There was none. There was only kids now.
Maybe fakir. Maybe because Chazal made a takona that I'm not sure which is the original. That's like the Shiloh that it from the Balamoed. I don't know. This is what we're talking about. The Balamoed says, "What do you mean? The main tekiyas is the miyumet, because that was because they made the Malchus and Strefes. We could argue fakir. Bottom line is, we see from the Gemara that there is some extra things we blow in order to confuse the sod. And there's a few machloikis in the Rishonim. What does it mean? Either it is that it breaks our heart, and maybe we do tshuva and confuse the sod. Okay, so that's verstanding. And the other one is that really Rashi says that it's confusing the Satan. That he hears that the Yidden are machabev the mitzvahs. When he hears that the Yidden give a chibub to the mitzvahs, so it's like, it's like two sides are coming to court, and one side sees that the other guy has a spitzy lawyer who is good friends with the judge, and he gives a high five to the judge. The other side, nishbar libay bekirbai. This guy got a lawyer who is buddies. They drink beer by night. Him and the judge. Onani oilach, onani ba. It's over. So the same thing with Satan. When the Satan sees that they didn't give a high five to the Rabbanu Shalom and that they mechabev the mitzvahs, so right away he's tzabrochen and he has no koyach to stand up, and it shuts his mouth.
But before you continue, 2 questions. Number 1 is Hashem couldn't give the Satan 1 month. Be quiet, no sacrifices. That's number 1. Number 2, the Satan is so against the Jews that he's more than Amalek. Amalek, we say every time, here, all the Jews want to do now to the Satan. He's bigger enemy than everybody else.
Yeah, he's a bad guy.
When you play chess, it's a game. It's a game. That's it. It's the Hashem's game.
Right.
It's about
But there's a story that Hashem said that there was once, and I don't remembering the context of the story, but the Rabbeim talk about it a lot. That once they got so angry at the Satan that they would matrid the Satan. They told the Satan, "Get out of here, and we don't want to see you for 30 days." So that's what we're trying to do always. That's exactly what we're trying.
5 minutes.
Okay, so but that's what we're trying. So, we were trying, but then the thing, that story of the Hashem was, he had what to be mekateh. But they said, we don't want to get out of here. We don't want to hear you. You're out. Anyway, okay. So let's go. The Rebbe says, let's go through the 5 minhagim with this thing in mind.
Whatever brings all this.
Yeah. I like to make the sheet just that you see it from the
But the Rebbe
clear.
doesn't. He said, but it says to the.
Yeah,
also,
for sure. The Rebbe said it on some was a simchas Torah dafka verbrengen. Interesting.
Yeah.
So the Rebbe said like
I
this.
just know that the young people, when they wake up in the morning, on Rosh Hashanah, they start oidu for the Shem food. They do it for
Oh yeah.
Who?
Yaman.
Yemen?
The
Yeah,
money.
we're
All the Shem food. Right away.
Oh yeah. Oh wow, clever light.
Don't wait till Shachris. Right
So
away.
they're really mebaded something.
Yes.
Because what's happening
Uh-huh.
in the beginning and then.
So the Rebbe says like this. You can go through all 5 minhagim and look at it this way. For example, we say Shelo Yavim Mosa Yeh Rosh Hashanah. That what do you mean Shelo Yavim Mosa Yeh Rosh Hashanah? He knows he knows when is Rosh Hashanah on the calendar. But the Rebbe says the Maril has this lashon. Any day Mosa Hadin via Katrik. What does it mean? Any day Mosa Hadin? He thinks that the Yidden blew for 30 days shofar and they stopped. It means that the Yidden helped them, that they already did tshuva and they're Korav Hashem l'chol korav. So that gives him a weakness. Doesn't mean any day at Mosa Rosh Hashanah he doesn't know which day on the calendar. He can buy for $10.99. He can buy also a Kol Chabad calendar, and he knows the day. He can circle the day. But any day he doesn't say Mosa Hadin via Catholic. He doesn't. He thinks that he thinks that it's all over. He thinks it's over because the truth is it doesn't must be on Rosh Hashanah. A person could be zeicher in, for example, there's a story in Tanakh about Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda that he was told that he's going to die, and then he was expelled to the Rebbeinu Shalom, and the Eibush said he's going to give him another 15 years to live. It doesn't sound like it happened on Rosh Hashanah. It's just that's not. No Mephoshim mentioned that. It sounds like it was whatever. It was the middle of Shvat, and the Navi came to tell him that there's a Gzeida, and he was mispelled. So the Yid could in Elul do tshuva, and the Eibush says, okay, that's it. You have a good year. So the Sultan knows that. So that's a shot that when he sees the Isoidus of the Yid, and so that's why we're blowing for 29 days, and then we stop. We feel confident that that's it. So it gives a shvachkeit into the Sultan. The same thing when we say we're not mentioning that it's Rosh Chodesh today, or we're not mentioning, we're not starting to reach Parshas Bereshis, is because we feel confident that by mentioning Rosh Chodesh, by starting to reach Parshas Bereshis, we have extra schus, and we feel confident that we don't need it. So that throws off the Sultan a little bit. That's one view. The Rebbe says fourth, it doesn't sound that's the pshat. And the Rebbe says another view, a third view, which he thinks is really the emes view, which is like this, the opposite view, that when a Yid mentions the Alav Yavo, there's a special schus from that. When a Yid starts the Torah, when you make a sim, anytime you make a sim and a schola, like we just made, Baruch Hashem Zech L'Bracha, is a special schus. So when the Yid doesn't have it, the Sultan says, there's a weakness in the avoid of the Yid. So he thinks, I don't have to fight. So even though it's every year, but still, he sees a weakness, he sees a crack. He sees, I don't have to fight so strong against, when your opponent is strong, so you gear up strongly. When the opponent comes in soft, he's a weakling, and you don't gather your strength to give a gazetz the punch because you think he's weak. But what's the emes trick? We're tricking ourselves. There's a schus of asiyum, there's a schus of yalav yave, there's a certain schusim, and we forfeit those schusim for what reason? So the Rebbe says a story. This was the dafka I just want to mention. When the Rebbe said the Fabrengen, the Rebbe told the story. The Rebbe cried a lot. I don't know the pshat. Why? The Rebbe Shtag event when he told the story. What was the story? No. I'm reading the Yamana. Whenever I this Lamates, I was there, but I don't remember. From Lamates, I had a Mokum Kavua, even though I was a very young kid. My father put a special bench, and so I could be higher up, and I had a Mokum Kavua in the 70. But I was there, but I don't remember it. I look at the Shima Sayaman, so Sometimes I remember a few things, but not ad kedei kach. So the Rebbe told the story that what happened was the Rebbe Marash. I mentioned the story down in the middle of the summer that the Rebbe Marash passed away. He was very young. There was a machlokas between the two sons. What was the machlokas? Each one wanted the other one should be a Rebbe. The older brother, it's a funny machlokas. The older brother said that the younger brother is going to be a Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, because it's Sitkis. And the younger brother said, no, that you're a tzaddik, and that you're a chochem, and he was taka. Because they say it was a very big pikeyach, and it went on for many years, till Siddim decided to put an end to it. They made the Rebbe Rashab Rebbe, and that was it. So, Mamish, the Tchil of his Nesius, once he already took over, he was like a lion. He was meyased, there's certain things, and he was, and he fought in behalf of Klal Yisrael and became very close to Chaim Britzke, and they had project. But Lapoil, in the beginning, he didn't want to be a Rebbe. But when he became a Rebbe, so Mamish in the beginning, so there was a Yid that came about something very serious. The Rebbe doesn't say in the story what it is. Something very serious. And he came and he asked for a bracha. The Rebbe Rashab looked up, he said, so the guy walked out and he broke out tears. He started to cry. He was a real tzara. And he thought he's coming all the way to the Rebbe to ask him for something. And he says, who walks into the room that minute? Reb Zalman Aron, the older brother. Why are you crying? He said he has this unbelievable tzara. And he went to the Rebbe Rashab. Rebbe Rashab said, wait a minute. Older brother goes to the younger brother. Says, what is this? A Yid comes. He's crying in the other room. Came to ask you for something. That's what you do? You tell a Yid, Rebbe Rashab said, you're right. He went, and he got up and put on his thing and his gartel and his hat. He said, please call him the Yid. And again, the Yid said what his problem was, and the Rebbe Rashab gave him an unbelievable bracha, and the bracha was in the sky. Again, we don't know what it is, and the bracha was in the sky. And then the Chassidim were asking, like, what's the pshat of the story? What's the pshat? Oh, you chap right away. So they said that the problem was that he wasn't a keli to take the bracha. He couldn't hold on to the bracha. So that's why the Rebbe Rashab said that Ken nicht help. When he went out and he started to cry to the Rebbeinu Shalom, the Leib Nishbor, so now he was a keli to take the bracha. Take was a keli. Be'emes, it wasn't stam. It wasn't stam. So now he became a keli to take the bracha. So the Rebbe says that this is the kunz of the Minig Yisrael. The Minig Yisrael is to say that we're doing a few things to be ma'arv of the soul. So he says, Yalav is a kosher azach. It's a big schus to say Yalav. To make a siyum on the whole Torah and finish off Parshas v'leisa bracha and to start Bereshit Bora Lakim, you make a kiddush for that. You make a big fabrenga for that. It's a big schus. Why are we not doing it? So they tell him, because there's a satan. What? The satan has such a hold over us that we have to move things around and to make the siyum instead of on Rosh Hashanah, Simchas Torah, to not mention Yalav v'Yavoi, to not blow shofar at Rosh Hashanah. We're doing all these things to be ma'arv of the satan. It little touches the heart. A little bit touches the heart. So it gives a Yid an unbelievable excitement. So really, sort of like both the Rishonim, whatever they say, both are true. It gives a leiv nishba to the Yid, and it also weakens the Satan at the same time. So it's a gain thing by not doing these special things, by not blowing shofar at Rosh Hashanah, not saying Yalav v'Yavoi, not making the siyum on the Torah. That it gives us a little bit a thing in the heart, like this Yid, that the Rebbe Rashab said, "Ich kann nicht helfen." So it gives us a jolt. What? For the Satan, we have to change things around because of the Satan? It's terrible. So it gives us an unbelievable excitement. The Rebbe says that the emes is on a deeper level. When we don't do something because we're lazy, so it's terrible. So we lose out of schus. But when we don't do something, because that's minig Yisrael. So but the Eibishter wants, that's like the Siyum Mesachas Bracha, which we just said, Al Tevos Kizok Neimecha, that you shouldn't be mavazed on August that Zikna Yisrael or Meyased, that we should be Mekayim. So how could you say that we lost? It can't be that we lost the schus, that we would have had a better schus. It would have been better. Would have been better if we did the siyum atoida on Rosh Hashanah. Second best is Simchas Torah. It's not true. Now that it already became a minig, we're not losing anything because we're Mekayim Ratzon HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and whatever the Eibishter wants, that's what we do. And the Eibishter wants we should be Mekayim Minhagi Yisrael, so we're not losing anything. There's no chayla, we're not losing anything. So let's summarize. So there have here 3 biyurim about the 5 minhagim of how we confuse the sub. And the third biyur is that the truth is that we're losing certain schusim. But for the Mitzad the Satan, he thinks his opponent is weak because he lost a couple of schusim. But Mitzad us faket, it gives us a stronger jolt, it gives us a stronger thing in Avodas Hashem, like the story of the Rebbe Rashab. And the emes is that we don't even lose anything because we're making Mekayim Minig Yisrael. So they shall help the taket that this year that we should have a ksivach simatova, shana tevim super, lamata masarat vachim, gashmis aberuchnis.
Satan is one of the oldest malachs.
Yeah. It's time for him to expire.
That's it.
I want to talk about the winter. It was freezing in Russia, really, really cold. At 5 o'clock in the morning, I need to wake up to go to travel. So he made to open his eyes, and the sun was there, which means all the effort. Not the steam. It's cold outside. What you doing?
Okay.
By the way, he didn't want to, look, there was no one there except one guy. And he said, the people are gone. So I said, well, I heard that there was a second box. And he went and looked for it.
No, we already did.
And then he showed it to me.
Again,
And I said, that's it. Little stack. But that was it.
When he said another box, I thought it was a larger.
No.
Okay, very good.